Congratulations to the graduating class! You've successfully managed to complete your studies as a virus was ravaging the planet, and now it's time for us to shove you out into the world kicking and screaming. But not before we bombard you with all sorts of questions about how you plan on living the rest of your life, including and especially questions about where you're going to college, what you're going to study, what made you decide to go there. It's like taking an exam every time the topic comes up, which is way too often. And even if you know the answers, there is no doubt that this quick question has crossed your mind at least a couple of times, which is college even worth the cost anymore? Let's first take a look at how bad the problem actually is. It's pretty common knowledge that college costs have skyrocketed, but how much have they? First, we gotta look at inflation, which is a measure of how much everything gets a little bit more expensive over time. That rose 236% since 1980, meaning on average, things are about 2.4 times more expensive than they were 40 years ago. Seriously, go watch an 80s movie and pay attention to how much things cost. Compare that to college, the average cost of which hasn't risen 2 times, or 3 times, or 5 times, or even 10 times. College is currently about 12 times more expensive than it was 40 years ago, meaning that college costs are rising 5 times faster than the cost of everything else. And it gets even scarier when you look at this growth compared to what people actually get paid. Because since 1984, median household income has only gone up a little over 30%. This means that college costs are growing over 8 times faster than wages are. And that's comparing an average wage. If you're gonna try and work to pay your way through college, chances are your wage is gonna be closer to the minimum wage. And when you adjust that for inflation, it's actually lower today than it was 40 years ago. TLDR, not only is college harder to pay for than ever, the financial benefits are getting less and less over time. And that's before you bring in factors like race and gender. And spoiler alert, it ain't pretty. All of this is thanks to the fact that demand for a college degree has done nothing but increase over time. In the early 20th century, a much higher percentage of jobs did not require higher education. There were a lot more jobs in areas like manufacturing, for instance, that could easily pay enough to sustain a middle-class life. But with those jobs disappearing and overall wage growth slowing, the percentage of good-paying jobs that required a college degree went up and up and up. So, colleges started charging higher tuition since they knew that people who really wanted to would find the way to pay it. Then the federal government started supplying grants and loans to students to help pay for these rising costs. Only problem is that these schools could now justify raising their prices even more, since they no longer had to worry about demand decreasing as costs continue to go up. And the demand has never been higher. In fact, it's estimated that as many as 2/3 of all jobs require at least some higher education. All of this explains why student debt is at record highs. It's the second largest chunk of debt in the country, more than credit cards, more than auto loans, and more than medical debt. But if you ask an outlet like Forbes, they'll say, oh no, don't worry, college is still worth the cost. College graduates make twice as much on average as high school graduates. But here are a few things that those billionaire jock sniffers don't tell you. First, about 3 out of 5 students who start college do not end up finishing. So if you're one of those peeps who takes out loans to attend college without finishing, you're stuck trying to pay that money off without the increased paycheck. And student loan debt is one of the 2 types of debt you cannot get rid of by declaring bankruptcy. That explains why there are all sorts of sites and courses out there promising that they can teach you how to make money and get out of all your debt. Meanwhile, some of them can't even be bothered to finish building their f***ing website. A lot also depends on what you want to study and where you want to study it. For one, in-state tuition at a public university is, on average, less than half that of out-of-state tuition for public schools and less than 1/3 that of private schools. You're also more likely to come out ahead financially based off of what kind of degree you earn. If you get a degree in, say, engineering or business or economics or science, you're more likely to come out ahead financially than someone who gets a degree in fine arts or humanities or social sciences. Now, that is not to say that only certain degrees are worth pursuing. All it means is that certain degrees are more likely to create a pay bump that is bigger than the cost you would pay to get it. If you want to be a successful writer or artist, you don't need a college degree, you just need to be able to sell your work and/or get published. Not so if you want to be an engineer or an economist. And again, a lot depends on how much you spend on your education. Say you want to study social sciences. If you can keep your annual education costs under 10 grand a year, your chances of coming out ahead are upwards of 70%. If you spend 50K a year, your odds shrink down to that of a coin flip. But there's good news on that front. Google, for instance, has just rolled out certificate programs in fields like IT support, data analytics, UX design, and project management that they treat with the same weight as a 4-year degree. And there are online learning sites that have partnered with schools to create online courses and certificates that cost way less than traditional tuition. And that's also not including community colleges, which have been an affordable option for people for generations. But all this still requires you knowing what you want to do with your life. And unfortunately, no one can really answer that for you. Just know that the biggest factor that determines whether or not college is worth it is whether or not you finish. So, if you're not 100% certain that you want to pursue a certain path, maybe hold off on taking out that $60,000 loan and explore some cheaper options first. And, of course, there's always one option that'll let you learn things for free. If there's any topic out there that's got you scratching your head and you're too scared to ask, you should totally send it our way. Tweet using the hashtag #QuickQuestion or email us at questions@brainjoltmedia.com. Don't forget to follow us, and remember, quick questions don't always have quick answers.